Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Veritas Podcast. I'm Scott Fowler, your guest host today, here with Dr. Hatemi.
Hello, friends. How are you?
So today we're going to do something a little interesting, and we're going to hear Dr. Hatemi's story. So one of the things that I've always wondered, I know he's from Turkey. I know he owns an urgent care in Lexington, but tell us a little bit about your background and where you grew up.
Grew up in Turkey between ages 2 and 17. I grew up in a small city called Bursa, close to Istanbul, which is the biggest city in Turkey. Finished high school, middle school there. And as soon as I finished high school, I moved to Kentucky with my family. And I started college at University of Kentucky.
So before we get to college, let's go back to Istanbul. So what was it like living in Istanbul in Turkey?
Turkey is a great country, you know. It's a very historically rich country, great traditions, great cuisine. It was an interesting experience. It's where East meets West. So you have Middle Eastern and European influences in one country. So it was great. It was very traditional, also very open-minded and very futuristic country. So it was a great country to grow up. And that's why I go visit there every so often, almost every year.
So isn't it kind of the border of Europe and Asia?
Exactly. Half of Turkey is in, not half, more than half is in Asia, but some part of Turkey is in Europe. So it's between two continents. So in Istanbul, you can go from Asian side to European side and European side back to Asian side on a daily basis.
What was it like going to middle school and high school in Turkey? How would you compare that to what you see here in the U.S.?
It's quite an experience. I actually had the opportunity to come to United States when I was in middle school, but my father didn't want me to come here. My father said that the academics are not the priority and the sports are the priority in the United States, and he wanted me to get as good as of education I can get and learn about the Turkish culture before I moved to United States. So he kind of postponed my arrival to United States by a couple of years. It was a different experience. I went to a very strict school. We wear uniforms. Mm-hmm. We didn't wear whatever we want. We had to abide the code of dress code. Our hair should be cut a certain way, and we should wear a certain clothes, and we should follow certain hygiene rules. Otherwise, we will be sent home and punished for it.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit about like maybe Ben Lippen.
Yeah, it's very strict. It was good in a way because you didn't have to think about what you're going to wear that day to school. Mm-hmm. Everybody wears the same uniform. Also, it doesn't create a problem between the rich and the poor, and people who can afford it and who cannot afford it, because the uniforms are unique and same across the board. So you cannot differentiate people from different backgrounds. Everybody's equal at schools.
So do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one older brother, like 2 years older than me.
So was he going to the same school as you?
He didn't go to the same school. He went to school right next door. So our schools were adjacent to each other, but we didn't go to the same school.
So what made your parents want to separate you guys?
We didn't get separated by design. There was a college entrance. There was an entrance exam to get into the high school. So I ended up getting to the special high school, and my brother didn't make the cut, so he couldn't make it to the same high school as us. So it was an entrance exam that differentiated the schools.
Did that cause some frustration?
Oh yeah. My brother's school was our rival, and they didn't like us because they think us we were the spoiled kids and we were smarter than they are. So there was a lot of jealousy going on, a lot of rivalry, but everything was okay.
So let's take it back. How did your mom and dad meet?
Mom and dad met in actually a different country, in Iran. My father was going through college, and he finished college in fine arts. He was a very famous artist, and my mother was his neighbor. So they met in the neighborhood, and they liked each other, and they got married. And then they had me and my brother, and we lived in Turkey for 15 years after that.
Wow. So your dad's been an artist his entire life. We're looking at his pieces right here behind us.
Yes, the artwork behind me is my father's. My father is a professional artist. He does that for a living. It's not his hobby, but it's his main profession. He's quite a famous artist in Turkey, in Iran, and all over Middle East. So he's well known.
So all of a sudden, what year did you move here to Kentucky?
I came to Kentucky in 1999.
And how old were you?
I was 17.
So all of a sudden, you've graduated high school. You're going into college. Did you already know that you were going to go to Kentucky University?
I knew I was moving to Kentucky because I have a lot of family members in Kentucky. And one of my uncles was a professor at University of Kentucky. So Kentucky was our first option. I picked my major in electrical engineering, not because I loved electronics, because I was good in math. So I wanted to just go to a field in engineering, and electrical engineering became the first choice.
So when was it that you changed majors? Or how long were you in the engineering program?
I was in engineering program for a total of 5 years. I had to do 1 extra year because I was a double major. I was a computer science major too. I didn't change majors. I actually graduated from engineering.
Wow.
So I never changed majors. I just, instead of going to graduate school in engineering, I decided to go to medical school instead. So I actually finished engineering and went directly to medical school.
So what was it like when you came to the University of Kentucky? How, that's your first time spending a lot of time in the United States?
Yes.
What was that like? Was there some culture shock?
There was quite a bit of culture shocks because I came from a very busy city, and it took a while to get used to not having people on the streets. I mean, I came from a place like New York City. There's everybody's on the streets, and I moved to suburban Kentucky where there is barely anybody on the streets, and everybody drives to everywhere. So it was quite an experience. I love University of Kentucky. I spent a long time there because I went to medical school there also. So I'm a big fan of Kentucky Wildcats, and I'm a big lover of Kentucky, the horses, and the entire state. So I have very strong ties in Kentucky. I still have a lot of family and business ties to Kentucky.
So when you were in your undergrad, so a double major, that's pretty tough. Lots of math with mechanical or electrical engineering and computer science. Were you involved with anything in school? Did you have a job? What were you doing in your free time?
Well, I had a job. I always had a full-time job. I work in pizza stores.
I thought you were gonna say you had a full-time job.
I always work. I have a very heavy schedule on campus. Also, I work full-time job to support myself. I worked for Papa John's for many years as a driver. 3 years.
See you delivered pizza.
Yeah, I delivered a lot of pizzas in Kentucky. So I was a very fast driver. I was only 17, 18 years old delivering pizzas. Yeah, and I kept
without
that
GPS.
Without GPS, everything. Yeah, actually, you didn't have GPS. You're right.
Yeah, did you read a map or did you just learn the roads?
I just had a big map and looked my way around. I had a good photographic memory, so I would learn the streets and just find my way around. Of course, I made a lot of mistakes delivering pizzas. Yeah. It was an interesting experience. I kept that job for almost 2-3 years. It supported me throughout college, so I really liked that job, but I had to quit before I went to medical school.
Yeah, I worked as a cook while I was at Midlands Tech at USC, so I've definitely got some interesting stories from a restaurant. What's the wildest delivery or craziest delivery you ever had?
Well, wildest delivery is actually it's kind of a silly story. I get this huge order. We get excited when we get big orders, like 15 pizzas.
There's going to be a big tip.
Yeah, it's going to be a big tip. And the location was just right next door. So I didn't have to drive far. I could drive a couple minutes, get there, come back and make a big tip. And I was so excited about it. And the address, I knew the address, so it was not difficult to find. I went in there. Only problem, I forgot to pick up the pizza. So I left the pizza. I was so excited, I forgot to pick up the pizza. So I had to come back and pick up the pizza and deliver it. But it was funny that I forgot to pick up the pizza for the delivery.
They still give you a good tip, though?
Oh, yeah, I got the good tip because I didn't waste too much time. I still get to go back, and it was very close by, so that was a blessing. But I forgot the pizza. And I have another story. I had... I had this delivery I made, and the customer paid all dimes, and didn't tip me on top of that, and give me all this change, $20 worth of change, and then didn't tip me because they said they don't have the money, and I was so upset, and then I was I guess I was not polite enough. They called they called the restaurant to complain about me.
Oh no, you got to call in?
Yeah, and then I'm the one who picked up the phone to answer it. So
That's so weird.
I took the complaint in myself personally, and it was a funny experience. But never pay your pizza with dimes and coins.
Oh my gosh, that's so
that
mean.
nothing makes the delivery guy more madder than the
Did
pay.
you hear the story? This was a few years ago. There was a mechanic who was working at an auto shop, and he quit, and he never got his last paycheck. Maybe he was fired. I don't know the whole story, but his boss paid him in pennies. Mm-hmm. Did you hear that story? They were covered in oil.
Yeah, I believe that.
Well, he sued his boss and actually won for damages.
Why?
Because the court said that you can't pay your employee in a truckload of oily pennies.
Yeah, that was really,
there was some malice there.
There's a lot of malice there.
Yeah, so I was very surprised to hear though that he actually won the suit against his manager.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I mean, we delivered pizza, and one of the places I delivered pizza were open until 4 a.m. It was a joint called Sir Pizza. And our clientele was very interesting, 4 in the morning,
You're going to get some interesting people.
Oh, yeah. Nobody else was open. We were the only pizza place open. And I delivered pizza to strippers, drug dealers, some sketchy characters. But the good thing is they all tipped very well. So I was not complaining about it. For an 18-year-old, the tip was real good.
Yeah, as long as you get that $5-10, you're like, absolutely.
Man, $5-10 is a lot of money.
Yes.
You can buy a lot of LITs with that money.
Mm-hmm. Give you some Long Island.
Yeah, Long Island iced tea all day long. I had good times. I have fun. I partied a lot. I studied a lot. It was good times in Kentucky.
Yeah, you don't hear that story very often. I honestly expected you to say at the first that you didn't work much in college, maybe a part-time job, but working full-time, now it makes sense. A double major, working full-time, you're obviously an extraordinarily driven person. What do you think, where did that drive come from?
Well, drive comes from, it's a typical immigrant story. I think a lot of immigrants are driven because you're an outcast, you don't speak the language very well, you are an outsider, try to fit into a society. So you have to outwork everybody, that's the only thing you have, no other asset. You don't have the connections, you don't have the human capital. All you have is your hard work. So you have to outwork everybody to shine, to get where you want. So, and also we came to make something out of our future. We came to get education, make money, make a career. So we have goals before we come. We didn't come all the way here to be nobody. So we work hard. I always have a couple jobs at a time. Pizza store was not the only job I had. I work in a library. I work in a computer lab. I did construction work in my own properties. I did a lot of work.
So you're really busting your ass the whole time,
all day long, all day long.
Yeah, I was working at Olive Garden on Harbison and Carrabba's on Harbison. The reason I really like cooking in restaurants because they worked with my schedule. I could take an 8 or 9 a.m. class, and then be done with my classes by 4 and go straight to work. And I would tell my manager I want to close at night and I want to work doubles on the weekends. And to me, they're like, that's great because no one wants to close.
Absolutely.
No one wants to work doubles on Saturday and Sunday. And I was like, give it to me. And also, I worked at the USC's radio station as a DJ.
Nice.
I worked as a photographer at the newspaper, and then I was the photo editor. And right next door was the Garnet in Black magazine. So I did some work for the magazine. Right next door to that was SGTV, the cable channel for the university as well. So we all worked together, we all hung out together, and the whole time I'm cooking in restaurants. So I completely understand. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in visual communications. That was my major within the School of Journalism. But I didn't know what was going to come of it. I just knew I wanted to get out of the service industry and, do something creative.
Service industry is fun. You learn a lot of soft skills, a lot of EQ developed during those days of serving. It's very useful. I admire people who can do that. I mean, we need those people for the economy to work. It's hard work. hard work. So we appreciate our service industry people.
Yeah, that was like the worst nights was when, corporate would be coming in the next day and we're literally scrubbing the walls with a toothbrush.
I scrubbed a lot of bathrooms floors. I've cleaned a lot of parking lots. I mean, I did a lot of cleaning,
So you have all these jobs. You're doing all this during your undergrad. When did you graduate from undergrad?
2004.
So you graduated in 2004, and then you went straight into medical school?
I did. I applied to this early decision program. So you only applied one school, and it was my alma mater. And University of Kentucky allowed you to apply earlier than anybody else. Only condition is if you get accepted, you have to go to that program. You cannot go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And I picked that program. I only applied University of Kentucky, and they picked me on my birthday, actually.
Wow.
So my friends who were at the same time applying medical school didn't even finish their applications, and I was already admitted to medical school.
You were in.
I was already in, so it was kind of a surprise. But I got in. I guess my MCAT score helped me a lot. I did very good on MCAT.
Yeah, that photographic memory's got to help a little bit.
Yeah, man. I'm a good test taker. I might not be good at a lot of things, but taking tests I was good at.
So you do well on your MCATs. You get into med school, and then what's that like? How is that different than engineering school? Were you surprised? Was there anything that threw you off?
Yes, actually. Engineering school is much different than the medical school. First of all, engineering school is much more diverse. Mm-hmm. A lot of engineering students actually international students. So I didn't feel lonely. I got to meet a lot of different interesting people from very different countries. Mm-hmm. It's predominantly male. I mean, I had very few female classmates. I have 90% male. Mm-hmm. And I met very, very smart people in engineering school. Medical school is a different beast. Medical school is not as diverse. Mm-hmm. Man to female ratio is 50-50, so I guess that's a good thing.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
They intentionally make it 50-50. So, but the diversity was not quite there. You have more...
There's a lot of white people.
A lot of white people. Yeah. I mean, you cannot get into medical school if you're an international student because of the cost of medical school. If you're on a visa, it's very hard to get into. So a lot of this is not intentional. I mean, it's by design. The cost of medical school keeps a lot of international students out of medical school. So I was one of the few international students in my class, probably one or two other than me, were international students. So I got lucky. I fell through the cracks, I guess.
So you fell through the cracks. We're going to take a pause. We'll be right back. Now you're in med school in Kentucky. Tell us a little bit about what that beginning experience was like.
Well, in medical school, it's like a marathon. Engineering school was more of a sprint. You study a couple of days before the exam, you pull some all-nighters, and you ace the exam if you're smart enough. In medical school, you have to be disciplined. You have to work every day. You have to study every day. It's almost religiously studying in and out. You cannot take days off. You cannot get sidetracked. You have to stay focused, and you have to study. That was the biggest difference.
How many years were you in that study situation?
4 years. I mean, medical school was 4 years.
Basically no days off.
No days off. I mean, it was a year-round schedule, very brief periods of vacation, but it was intense. It was a boot camp for 4 years.
How much did it cost?
A lot. I mean, I was lucky when I get into medical school, it was relatively cheap. When I entered medical school, I think the tuition was $9,000 a year. And by the time I graduated, it was almost 30.
Whoa.
So it escalated when I was in medical school. So I got lucky. I feel bad for people who are applying medical school right now because medical school is expensive.
Yeah, it's 6 figures, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
that would be a cheap one.
I have friends who've graduated with $300,000 in debt just from medical school, educational debt. I even heard higher numbers, but it's not abnormal to have it's very standard to have $200,000-$300,000 in debt coming out of medical school.
So now you're in medical school. You're experiencing the differences. What was an interesting situation that you had in those 4 years?
Well, to get used to, I mean, medical school is a completely new journey. You are learning about human body, and you're dealing with cadavers, cutting them up, learning about human anatomy. That was a different experience. The sheer volume of knowledge you have to learn and consume is mind-boggling. I mean, we will read hundreds and hundreds of pages per day just to stay up, keep up with the schoolwork. So that was a difference. But dealing with people and the characters, doctors are a very interesting group. It's a very self-selected, very smart group of people, but also very different in their personalities. I think they're more introverted, overachievers, kind of a low EQ, very high IQ, but low EQ environment.
So their emotional intelligence might be lacking.
No, a lot of homeschooled kids, and
really?
No offense to homeschooled kids.
No, but I just didn't know that.
I mean, there's a lot of homeschooled because you need to have the good scores. So
okay, so if you're able to perform well on those tests,
yes,
then you can get in. Homeschool kids were.
We had a lot of homeschool classmates because they do very well academically. Their parents are on top of it, but. It's a very smart group of people, sometimes socially awkward, but it's hardworking bunch of people.
So what was something crazy you saw happen while you were there? Maybe with another student even, not even like a situation.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people fainting in the first week. I mean, couldn't even, because, it's kind of a shock. They take you to anatomy lab and they put a whole bunch of dead bodies in front of you. And
I don't know if I can handle that.
Yeah, a lot of people couldn't first week. There's a lot of people fainting, passing out, crying, people dealing with the dead bodies. But surprisingly, I guess you can get used to anything. And about a week or two into it, these same people who were fainting will not leave the bodies alone and keep cutting it. And I had one of them in my group, and this kid, I mean, he was not getting out of the lab, walking in and out. Yeah, he didn't have any problems. So all of them get adjusted. Nobody dropped out of medical school.
Really?
Nope, not a single person.
Wow.
They all got through the lab. So
wow,
and they did well.
I have a videographer friend. He was a mentor of mine. The guy I went to Vietnam with. He was filming for a hospital at University of Chapel Hill, and they were recording a surgery. It was some rare situation, and the nurses had to bring in smelling salts to keep him from fainting because he was standing overhead filming in his full outfit.
Oh yeah.
And he thought after that he was like, never again.
But I almost fainted in the operating room myself, but that's not because I can handle blood. It was because of the temperatures. You're wearing a gown, you're masked up, you have a bonnet, so you're wearing a hat, and it's hot in there. And with the lights in the surgical field, because I did a year of surgery residency too. So I was an intern in surgery, and you're dealing with a lot of hot temperatures, and you get dehydrated, and you might get very dizzy during your surgery. That's common, actually.
So you make it through the 4 years, and then you go into residency,
yes.
Correct? Okay. So tell me how that works. I'm not super familiar.
Residency is, I did a year of general surgery residency in Kentucky, and then I went to Buffalo, New York, and I continued the rest of my residency there for another 3 years. Buffalo was a very different place. I love Buffalo. If anybody from Buffalo watching this video, I love Buffalo. I have a special place in my heart for
really?
Buffalo. Yeah.
I listen to a lot of comics, and again, a lot of them for LA, some of them from New York. They talk a lot of crap about northern New York.
We call it Western New York, actually.
Okay.
Buffalo used to be a very big city. I mean, Buffalo is now the skeleton of what it was 100 years ago. Buffalo was a bustling town with 1 million people, and it had the infrastructure to support that. But unfortunately, because of the great migration to the south, and all the mills are closing down, a lot of people moved out of Buffalo. Also, the weather is not the best in Buffalo.
Yes.
I mean, it's cold weather. So people get fed up with the weather, so they move to the south, and I'm one of them. As much as I love Buffalo, I couldn't deal with the winters there. It's cold winters.
If your car stops during a blizzard, you could die if you don't have the provisions.
I mean, people get stuck in the middle of a highway, and they have to rescue them. I mean, this is very common. I mean, you have to wake up half an hour early just to clean the snow off your car. People from South Carolina might not relate to that, but
no idea.
I mean, it's tough life. When I laugh at the schools here, they close like even a little bit snow or rain. They're like, oh, these schools are closed. I was like, in Buffalo, they will keep a school open through the blizzard. They will keep it up, and they're tough people, very resilient people, very contain sufficient people. I mean, Buffalo people are special people. I mean, I miss that character. And the diversity of Buffalo was very, very good.
So when you did your first year of residency in surgery, was that a choice? Did you think maybe that's the direction you were going to go?
I always thought about doing a surgeon, but no, I want to do surgery because of the hands-on experience, and I could pick between internal medicine and surgery, and I liked the surgery experience. I think it was very. I always wanted to be a part of an operating room. I worked in the operating room during my undergrad as an assistant, so I just wanted to have that year of experience.
What type of operations?
Anything. I mean, I served in orthopedics, urology.
Wow.
I did a lot of general surgery. I worked with a lot of vascular surgeons, trauma surgery for a couple months, plastic surgery, but mostly urology, trauma surgery, and general surgery.
Is this typical of the of something you might see in a normal urgent care doctor?
No, a lot of urgent care doctors do not have surgery training, which just comes in handy when I have to suture people up and then deal with trauma. I don't get freaked out easily. I mean, blood doesn't scare me. I probably handle more than I should handle in an urgent care setting, which I should have sent to the ER. But I hate people to go to ER, spend 8 hours waiting. I hate the environment in the ER. I hate sending patients to ER unless I really, really, really have to.
I am fortunate that I've only ever had to been to the ER once or twice in my life, but I've been to a lot of Lexington Medical Centers, which is now Prisma. Spent a lot of time growing up.
No, Lexington Medical Center is not Prisma. Lexington Medical Providence is Prisma. I'm sorry, not Providence. No, they're separate. So there are 3 players. Lexington Medical Center, you have Providence, which is part of MUSC, and Prisma is separate.
Okay.
So no, Lexington is independent.
So yeah, I spent a lot of time as a kid. My sister would get sick a lot. I had acute sinusitis, so I was having sinus infections all the time. And we would just wait for hours at a time. It was terrible. And then during the pandemic, I was in this business referral group, and I heard about Veritas, and that they had low wait times. And I said, I'm going to go check it out. I came to your clinic and was literally in there in 12 minutes. I never had that type of experience before.
Yeah, speed is very important. I hate waiting in the waiting rooms. I hate seeing doctors and waiting for them for hours and hours. So when I'm going to open my own clinic, it's going to be the Chick-fil-A model. You're in and out, fast, efficient, and not short wait times. Mm-hmm. And that's why we are very popular. Emergency rooms, 6 hours, 8 hours, even 10-hour waits are normal.
Yeah. I'm not interested in having to wait that long. And I'm
It's
so
crazy,
glad that you feel the same way and decided to put that within your practice.
And I don't want to bash the hospitals, but the level of care you receive in the emergency room is different depending on your insurance too.
Really?
Yep. Unfortunately, I've seen certain hospitals turning down patients who doesn't have insurance or do not provide them the necessary care they should be getting.
Wow.
And try to get them out. By law, they need to serve everybody regardless of the paying status or insurance status. But I've seen quite a bit of difference in the level of care between people who have good insurance and people who have no insurance. So I'm not going to name the hospitals, but there are some local hospitals notorious for turning people down and not treating them properly, the level of their care.
We'll get Dr. Hatemi talking more controversial in the future.
Yeah,
not today, though.
I don't want to give names. I don't want to be public enemy number one here. But I'm an outsider. I'm an independent operator, and I will tell you all the dirty secrets of the hospital around me in a different episode. But not today.
Yeah, we'll get there. So let's take it back to your in Buffalo, and you're finishing up your residency. So now you've been in basically the university system for 12 years.
Yes, so I was in academia 12 years at that point. Exactly.
So where do you go when you finally graduate? Actually, how is it to graduate with your residency? How did that feel?
It feels great. Finally you can practice without supervision. It's a great feeling. But you come to this bifurcation, you need to make some decisions. You want to stay in academia or you want to go to private practice. I'm not a big academia person. I don't like the pace of academia. I like faster pace, so I went to private practice. So my job, I work in Indiana, Chicago, and then I got a job in Charleston.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up here.
About what year were you in Charleston?
This was 2016.
Okay, so way before the pandemic. So what were you doing in Charleston?
I worked for an urgent care group for 6 months in Charleston. After 6 months, they really liked me, but they said they need me in Midland, so they moved me to Columbia to work in their 3 urgent cares here. They still have those 3 urgent cares. It's a company here locally. I worked for them a couple of years. And then I started having disagreements with the management about certain issues. Also, we got bought out by private equity, so it became a corporation-based model.
Now you have a board of directors to deal with.
Board of directors, a lot of management, people who have no medical education telling you how to practice medicine. It's profits over patients. There was a lot of dirty dealings going on, and I didn't like it. I didn't get into medicine to be a part of that world. So I decided that at one point I want to open my own urgent care. I bought the building in 2018, end of 2018, and then mid-2019 I opened the urgent care, and then the rest is the history.
Yeah, so we guys heard a little bit about that last time, but if you haven't gone back and listened to episode 1, you got to go check it out. But let's go into what it was like to open your own urgent care. How did you find your first location?
Well, first location is a friend of mine brought it to me a year prior to that. I looked into it, but at that time I was not ready to buy the building and move in. But when I was dead set on opening my own urgent care, I say, hey, let me look at that building one more time. Maybe it's still on the market. I got lucky. It was still on the market. It didn't get sold over that year and a half. They dropped the price and they changed the real estate agent. So it was a perfect combination. Yeah. So I went in there and I take a look at it, and the agent was asking me why you want this building. I said, I have seen this building before. I just was not ready to buy, but now I am ready to buy. I agreed with the owner on a certain price, which was favorable to me, and I ended up buying it. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah, absolutely, because what month was that in 2019?
December 2018.
Oh, actually. It's okay, but it's very close to January of 2019.
Yes, very close to January 2019, yes.
Wow. And then all of a sudden, a year and 3 months later, we get the pandemic.
Yep. About 8 months into it, we got the worst pandemic of the century. We were seeing 30, 40 patients a day, and our numbers jumped to 170, 180 patients. So we literally quadrupled our patient volumes during COVID. One of the things is we had one of the few clinics stayed open throughout the entire pandemic. At the first shock, a lot of urgent cares even closed. And the doctors... It was a bad situation because the primary care doctors will not want to see the patients, send them to ER. ER doctors are overwhelmed quite a bit, and they don't want to see those patients neither. So there was a lot of people at home doesn't know what to do and where to go to, and then we treated those large group of people throughout the COVID pandemic.
I was one of them. That's how I discovered Veritas.
Yeah, we've seen everybody. We've seen 25,000 people in our database, so it's quite an extensive patient roster we've seen during the COVID, and still seeing those patients.
So you made it through the pandemic. Now you've opened another location downtown.
Yes.
And you've got several other business ideas in the works. What's next?
Well, we're going to make the second clinic a success. It's by USC campus. So once we reach a certain number there, I'm going to open my third location on Broad River. I already acquired the building. I just need to make the renovations and get the permits to start that one. I want to go to areas where there is no urgent care. Lexington was a different exception. I mean, there's a lot of urgent cares here, and we have been successful. So can you imagine going to a place that they have no competition, how well you can do? And Broad River is that one of those underserved areas.
Yes, there's not even a grocery store.
No, not a distant grocery store.
They're actually opening a new one, sorry, but it's not even open yet.
It's a problem. It's a clinic dessert there. I mean, there's nothing there. People have to go to emergency room to get basic care, and I think my urgent care in Broad River Road will create will satisfy a huge demand there.
There's a lot of apartment complexes.
Oh yeah,
a lot of families.
It's a very densely populated area.
Yes.
There's a lot of people living there, so those people deserve to have health care at their fingertips.
They need some help.
Absolutely.
So that's the next step. If you guys are interested in learning more information, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, check Veritas out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you have any healthcare related questions, I know Dr. Hatemi is ready to answer them for you. So if you come in, just walk in to the clinic. You don't have to make an appointment. And once you sign in, Dr. Hatemi will be happy to answer all your healthcare questions.
Absolutely. Come and let us serve you. Allow us to serve you in our 2 convenient locations, one in Lexington and one in South Assembly Road in Columbia. And we are more than happy to take care of you where other people cannot.
Thanks for having me today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
We'll see y'all soon.
See you soon.